Hi, this is Hilary Bradbury with the Action Research Plus Foundation. People often ask me, how do you know what's good action research? And turns out we have an answer for that. And we say that this is a good bridge to dialogue. It's not like an assessment, pure and simple, but we ask ourselves, what's to appreciate in our work and what is still missing? So it can be a kind of an ongoing dialogue, an ongoing and continuous improvement. You might want to follow along using the link here on this page. There are 7 quality choice points that I'll talk about briefly, referring to my own work. You know why? Because it's safer to talk about your own work when you're talking about quality. Yes, hint to the wise. So the first quality is the question of how clear are you in what you're up to? I know that sounds terribly obvious, but you'd be surprised how difficult it is to be truly clear about your objectives. So my objectives in the work that I just mentioned was to bring a mindfulness program to healthcare workers, physicians, volunteers in a palliative care context. And so the objective was, first of all, to see how does this go over? How do we play with this mindfulness program in a way that works for us? That's the more action-oriented part. And then to see what's the impact of it on those who were involved. How is this interesting? Well, it had never been done before, believe it or not, as an action-oriented, transformative piece of research in a palliative care ward. So who was interested? Obviously those who were involved in the program. They were volunteers, and the hospital in which it happened, and I think a larger context, and hence the publication in the Journal of Applied Behavioral Sciences. So partnership and participation is super, super important. Basically, if you don't have it, you're not doing action research. So the question is, how do you make the values of participation and relationship clear? Now remember, participation refers to a continuum. There's no perfect way in which it always happens in all contexts. In my particular case, it was one in which all the volunteers, so including physicians, nurses, volunteers on the palliative care ward, they were my key participants. They were the people who were involved in the co-design all the way through. The patients, for lots of reasons, were not. They were involved in the mindfulness effort, but they were not actually involved in the design. I mean, not to be rude, but they were dying, so, one has to be careful about involvement. What's the contribution to action research theory and practice? That's the third quality choice points. And so the question is, how is it the work that I was doing explicitly linked? How is it building on the wider body of knowledge? So of course I had to look up key influences. What do we know about mindfulness? What do we know about action inquiry? How do we put the two together? What's really the intervention that I'm doing? How is that to be framed? So there's lots of work to think about in terms of presenting our work and actually doing our work. We stand always on the shoulders of giants. The scientific endeavor is always building on and building towards. And then there's the question of how clearly articulated are the methods, are the processes. And here the key is show, don't tell. And a really great way to show is through the voices of the participants. So I was doing surveys, I was doing interviews, I was doing focus groups, and of course doing a training around the actual mindfulness itself in the group and people sharing about how that was working for them. So all of that data was gathered, and I was then able to work through the data, classic grounded theory, and bring back powerful quotes about each of the themes. How is it actionable? Well, how did the action inform the work? Well, you want to read the paper, it's so exciting. But it had a very positive impact on all those who were involved, actually, and we have some data, obviously, to show that. And then inside of that, a deeper understanding of being seated in one's groove. That's how a lot of the participants spoke about the power of the work. They felt much less anxiety as a result of the intervention around mindfulness. And this itself became an intervention that then changed actually the palliative care ward that we did the work on. Reflexivity, quality choice point number 6. I had to write about my self-location. How critical was I about myself in my work, my limitations, my biases? I'm a meditation teacher, so that was one of the reasons that all of this could happen. So we try to explain in reflexivity why things and the researchers brought about the kind of work that they did and the limitations with that. How could it have been better, and so on. Finally, number 7, what's the significance of the work? And for us, significance means sustainability. How does our work bring about a more sustainable world? There's no one way to answer this question. But in the work, I tried to show that we were moving from a power over, you might remember that hospitals are very hierarchical kinds of places, to a power with kind of place. This intervention helped begin to shift from pyramid to circle. Thus concluding, showing the 7 quality choice points in action. I hope you find them useful too.